Welcome to Supply Chain Now, the voice of global supply chain. Supply Chain Now focuses on the best in the business for our worldwide audience, the people, the technologies, the best practices, and today's critical issues, the challenges and opportunities. Stay tuned to hear from those making global business happen right here on Supply Chain Now.
Welcome once again to another amazing and very interesting episode of Supply Chain Now. Today we have a very international panel and an amazing guest. And I have a really good co-host as well that I'll talk a little bit about him in a second. But we actually have people logging in for this interview from Dubai, Australia, London, and Atlanta. So a really international show today. Thank you very much for listening to Supply Chain Now. And again, if you guys want to sign to our shows and listen to our episodes and share the interesting conversations that we're having every week, please do so. It's 100% free. Just wherever you get your podcast from, just look for us. Same thing through our website at supplychainnow.com. And now, without further ado, let me introduce you to a man that doesn't really require too much introduction. My co-host for today, and hopefully for many more episodes, Kim Winter. Kim is a logistics and supply chain influencer, almost a celebrity by now. He's a corporate advisor, a trade facilitator, and leadership coach and mentor, and a jack of all trades. Kim, how are you doing? It's a pleasure having you here.
Hey, Enrique. Hola. Thank you. Yeah, I'm great. And good, just ticking over to midnight here in Dubai, but fantastic to see you again and to have our guests with us today.
Thank you for joining us. And please go ahead, Kim. Why don't you introduce our listeners to our guests for today?
Love to, Enrique. So, folks, today we're honoured to have a great team with us from Oni Group, and Oni Group is one of the premium work partners with a small company called Google. I may have heard of them, and today we have three of their senior executives, Darragh Murphy, the MD for Oni Group, and Dara, you're hailing from Sydney today, or tonight, I think, aren't you?
Yeah, sure am. So it's been an early morning for myself, so we could coordinate this.
Good stuff. Thanks and welcome, Dara. We also have Emanuela Lombardi as the Global Head of Marketing for Oni Group. And welcome, Emanuela. Where are you today?
Thanks, Kim. I'm based in London, about 8 p.m., I'd say. Yes, 8 p.m. approaching.
Very good.
Finishing the day.
Good stuff. And our final guest as part of the trifecta that we've managed to get together and give us the time tonight is Darragh Tiekle and Martin Tiekle. And Martin, you're the global head of partnerships with Oni Group, and I think you're in London as well, yeah?
Hi everyone. Yep, I am based here in London.
Well, thank you once again, Kim, for introducing us to everyone here. Thank you to Martin, Emanuela, and Dara. It's always a pleasure to talk to individuals that are really shaping the world and changing logistics and just making a positive impact all around. So thank you once again for joining us. Why don't we start with just your life? We really want to learn a little bit more about yourselves. If you could tell us a little bit more about your stories that shape who you are and the career that you have and the successful individuals that you've become. If you could kind of trace that back to where you were born, something that maybe a eureka moment that kind of you can share with the audience about you and your life. And let's start with Dara. Go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Enrique. So Dara comes from a small town in Ireland in the southeast, and the son of a farmer and a publican, and one of 8 kids. So a good traditional Catholic family and a similar type of
What number were you in those 8?
I was the youngest. The
youngest of 8.
So the baby of the family. So obviously had a very strong family ecosystem, and that's sort of a testament to my mother and father, and still to this day we're very very strong relationship throughout the family, and family is something that's actually very important to myself, but also something that we instill within Oni Group, and family is, we were saying that family always comes first.
What do you remember back then? If you kind of, you were living in a farm, I guess, and you were the youngest of 8. And what is it, one thing that comes to your mind about that day and those days and that time with your parents?
Yeah, so my father came from a farming background. I wasn't actually brought up, although a lot of my cousins, and we spent a lot of time on farmland and working, growing up on farmland. But I suppose one of the things that still sticks with me is you had to eat fast or you didn't eat at all.
I'm the eldest, so I cannot really relate too much to that comment, but I totally get it. And we'll get back to you, Dara. But Martin, can you tell us a little bit more about you, where you're from, a couple of interesting stories about your upbringing?
Sure. Well, firstly, I'm an only child, so I always ate too much, to be fair. But I think my background is a complete juxtaposition to Dara. So I was born in Sydney, Australia, in the Northern Beaches. Had a very sports mad father and quite an academic mother. So I had two very different kind of parents influencing me. I was always obsessed with doing something outside, something active. I was either going to be a tennis player or a cricketer or something on those lines, and I did absolutely neither. Went to university, studied computers, and then naturally, of course, became a tour guide, because as you can see, that's a natural projection. I traveled the world for a couple of years, just trying to understand, I suppose, what I enjoyed, what I was passionate about. And I came to two things, and one of them was technology and the other one was travel. Came back, worked for a travel tech company, and then started working through Oni Group. And I think that journey sort of has surfaced from a few different little experiences. I was actually thinking about, I figured you'd probably ask a question like this. I had a strange little thought in my head. I was 7 years old and I was playing cricket. I had a game the next day and I was terrified of being hit with the ball. And I was also terrified of getting out. Typical only child, doesn't like to lose. My dad, remember, strapped all these pads and he put me in this cricket and just started throwing balls at me, right? But I learned to practice. I learned to kind of overcome your fears. And I think that level of I suppose, anti-fear, if you will, it's just shaped my life. Just throw yourself in and see how you go, and almost fake it till you make it in many times.
That's
a bit of a different upbringing.
And so true as well. Like, is there anything in your travel around the world that kind of like changed the way you kind of perceive your reality at the time, or something that kind of made an impact on you that then decided or had some kind of impact into the career choices you made later on?
Oh, fantastic question. I think, look, traveling around, you meet so many different types of people, and you get engrossed in so many different cultures. One of the things that sort of made me very humble about where I was from and my upbringing and, experiences that I was able to have, it's just, I remember sitting in Italy actually and seeing the Colosseum for the first time and going,
nice.
Wow, like if you work hard, this is where you can get to. Like one day you could come here for a business trip or something. And I think it spurred me on to keep reliving that experience again. And I think that was a big moment for me, to be honest. Yeah.
Thank you. And Emanuela, now to you, if you can tell us a little more about yourself, where you were born, a couple of interesting anecdotes of your upbringing.
Sure. So if you can guess by my name, I was born in Italy, in a city called Latina, just by the sea, south of Rome. I grew up with a lot of cousins, just like Dara, and a few of them terrified me. I was always the one winning for food, but I have a particular cousin who used to terrify. I shared a bedroom with her at one point. She used to tell me awful stories about monsters, etc., and that shaped me so much that I decided to follow her to London, and it changed my life. So that was quite influential. But yeah, I have two brothers and one sister, all much younger than me. And they are planning to all follow me. Most of them follow me to London. So it will be a busy Italian family soon.
It's going to be definitely fun. It sounds like a good gathering in London. And thanks for sharing that story. Is there any kind of mentor or someone in your early parts of your life that kind of shaped who you are now? Any kind of a mentor that you had?
Not so much early in life. I think I've met throughout my time in London. I met lots of very smart people throughout my career in London, especially one of my previous manager, Kate. She taught me a lot about dealing with different personalities, especially working in global teams. You know, how to approach different team members based on the culture, based on whether they like maths or they like languages, you know, different personalities, and also never to challenge, not being afraid to challenge, but always do it with a kind of sense of respect and being understanding of what the person is going through and how they're used to dealing with other people, essentially.
Thank you. Dara, back to you. So tell us a little bit more about you from the early parts of your life to your professional career, and then I'll let Kim's kind of take over and kind of walk us through your professional careers and a couple of the things that led to Oni Group and the three of you from so many different parts of the world with different kind of stories and upbringings coming together into this amazing company.
Sure. So I studied computer science background, studied in Ireland, and went on to do a master's in human computer interaction. So with a very strong focus on the end consumer. From that, then it's a couple of sort of knock-on coincidental effects of how I actually ended up with OniGroup. I never intended to come to Australia. It was only by chance. Traveled to New Zealand after university, and from that, I had a housemate who actually worked with OniGroup, who was living in Sydney, and he said that they were expanding. He said there was a couple of job opportunities, so traveled to Sydney, had an interview, and 2 days later, I was in Singapore doing a deployment. So it was a baptism of fire.
It sounds like travel kind of binds you guys together. It sounds like you all had like a fair share of travel, and kind of it's at least one of the common factors among the three. So as you actually ventured into New Zealand and then Australia and Singapore, what did you learn about the different cultures, and what kind of what differences and what similarities to your life in Ireland?
Yeah, so it actually the cultural difference wasn't too much of an impact. New Zealand and Australian culture is actually quite similar to Ireland, similar type of sense of humor, sarcastic, don't take ourselves too seriously. But I think the whole travel and the sort of sense of adventure of all that is also stood to OniGroup very strong. That we're actually not afraid to travel, not afraid to embrace new cultures, but also know how to build relationships with people in those different cultures, which has been a big part of the growth of OniGroup and sort of our expansion across different regions.
Thank you. Kim, go ahead. You must have a couple of questions regarding their professional careers.
Yeah, I guess. Well, what I'd like to hear is really a little bit about Oni Group. You know, I've certainly had some exposure to Oni Group, but maybe we can give our audience, whether it's you, Martin, perhaps a bit of a heads up on just what Oni Group does, because they do some very interesting and very unique things, particularly with Google.
Yeah, look, in terms of a company, we are a little bit different. In fact, we just like to be different in everything, I think. We don't like to be cookie cutted. So we are a Google Premier Partner, and we have been for 15 years, basically, for a very long time. But we almost consider ourselves as an extension of Google as opposed to another partner, basically. We focus on solving problems as a core, whether that be across different verticals such as logistics or delivery, whatever it might be. But we like to solve problems. That's the first bit. We've got a whole team of very smart people, and Dara and I surround ourselves with people that are much smarter than us, that look into the nitty gritty of all types of different challenges that companies have and look for solutions to solve them using really powerful Google technology. But at the forefront of that is data. We love data. We want to make it useful. We want to make it universal. And we want to make it accessible. So all our solutions are very much encompassed from that perspective. But solution based on our problem is our core. Yeah.
Okay. Dara, maybe you can give us a bit of a heads up on a recent initiative that I've come across and been looking at, and I know there's some videos around at the moment, addressing what is, I've been in the logistics sector like Enrique for about 1,000 years, or it feels like 1,000 years some mornings, this whole issue of last mile, bearing in mind the context of that being that over the last 12 months, much of the world has discovered logistics and supply chain in a way that it never did before. Much as a result of anything as the huge step change in consumer behavior in terms of online acquisitions and buying right across the board, and different ways of acquiring goods, specifically through digital means, online means. But talk to us a little bit about this last mile initiative that you've been involved in and what that's all about and what issues it's addressing.
Yeah, sure. So I might take a bit of a step back, because like you touch on a very interesting point here, as the rate of innovation that has occurred over the past 12 months, and part of that is due to necessity. And maybe to give the listeners a bit more sort of context into OniGroup. So we've quite a wide diversity of sort of customers, both from large traditional enterprise, but also very new, innovative startups. And I think that's part of the value that Oni brings, because we get to see very unique, diverse sides of how different types of businesses are trying to address similar challenges. So we're able to bring sort of innovative ideas to more sort of traditional established companies, but also then bring that the knowledge that we gain from working with large established companies to ensuring that these innovative businesses can scale and grow. Just
on that, Dara, sorry for butting in, but if we drill down on that for a minute, I mean, over 2020 and the onset of the pandemic have a massive impact on the modeling and the type of business that Oni Group does, or was it business as usual, but there was just a huge uptick in certain areas? Give us some insight there.
Yeah, I suppose for us, it wasn't a huge significant change. It was probably the rate at which our customers were willing to both adopt technology and how do they consider technology to help them scale and to overcome some of the challenges. And that's sort of where we fit in, is making sort of that technology more easily accessible. And how do we actually help our customers and work with our customers to use technology and use the data that we get from either from Google or utilize the data that they've acquired or built up over the years that they just haven't been utilizing to the fullest extent.
Okay, awesome. So back to maybe then circle around back to the issue of last mile. Which one of you would like to talk to that? Because this is a massive issue. Getting goods to where they need to be with massive percentile increases of consumers requiring goods to be delivered to their homes as opposed to going out to the traditional bricks and mortar retail scenario. So it's a really interesting area. It's a hot subject right across the whole landscape and ecosystem of logistics and supply chain. Who'd like to talk to that and update us a little bit on the initiative that you're driving at the moment?
I can take that one. So I think it's a really interesting one. We were sort of moving in the direction of working with a lot of our customers on enhancing their last mile services via different data sources, via Google data sources, all sorts of different things. Then, of course, the world turned upside down. And to Dara's point, that rate of change just accelerated at a level that was incredible. You had teams in incredibly large businesses that were exploring via an R&D sense of, well, maybe we should offer like an Uberification type of delivery service, to literally by April piloting something. It was unbelievably quick. What we sort of did is we looked at, well, what were some of the challenges that we had been fortunate enough, I suppose, to see with all these other different businesses that we'd helped, particularly in emerging markets, like big startups in Southeast Asia, the Middle East, North Africa, and a few others as well. And we kind of looked at those core bits that even these big digital natives couldn't really solve themselves. So we started to think, well, is there a solution that maybe we can build, or maybe we can offer these particular customers? And we started to look from that perspective. The biggest interesting part, though, I think, was the ability for customers to invest actually at that time. That unknown was monumental in 2020 and still is, but they realized that they had to invest more so in technology to kind of progress to that post-COVID world, which I think was amazing. So from our sense, we focus very heavily on our large players and develop products and services with those customers, but also use our experience in working with tiny little digital native startups growing up over the last 5 to 10 years. Yeah.
Martin, you mentioned, I'm sorry to interrupt, Kim, the different regions of the world. You could tell our listeners like a little bit more about like the reach of the company, because it sounds like you work with very large corporations, big data, but also helping smaller startups. So you kind of cover a lot of different company sizes through the spectrum, but region-wise, what's your focus?
Yeah,
right
look,
now?
very good question. When I first started in 2012, it was Australia, New Zealand. That was sort of our hood, so to speak. In 2014, we moved into the UK, and then in 2016, we moved into Asia. Initially, it was just covering kind of the core areas, the United Kingdom, and of course, Singapore, really, and a little bit of Indonesia. What occurred, though, was we sort of reached out and went, well, there's a lot of solutions here for a lot of multinational companies where they require help in developed and emerging markets. So we naturally got exposure into all these other different countries. We're working with about 55 countries at the moment across the world, in Australia, New Zealand, Southeast Asia, North Asia, UK, Nordics, Western Europe, Middle East, North Africa. And we are very lucky to do so, very lucky. So we're seeing a whole different range of challenges, some which are shared and some which are completely unique. One that comes to mind is in the Middle East, the fact that they don't have building numbers and street numbers. That is a very unique challenge. We don't really see that in the rest of the world. So coming up with solutions to try and map something that's not mapped before and deliver something that something that is virtually unmapped is a really different sort of experience and different solution. Yeah.
Emanuela, why don't you pitch in to that question and tell us through your perspective and your lens, which is not necessarily technology or some of the different expertise that Dara and Martin have. How do you get your arms around like a international problem like that with presence in 55 countries, is what Martin said, in different regions with different ways of even writing and numerical systems? It's like, how someone with your background, how do you kind of manage something so complex?
It's definitely been a very interesting I think I've been with Oni for 16 months now, and it's been very, very packed with learning. And I feel like I'm slowly becoming an expert in logistics in the last year, especially. We are focusing lots of our events and campaigns to help logistic customers, but also retailers and e-commerce providers manage their logistics to meet their customer expectations. And I just feel like I've learned so much. And it's, as you say, like, it's just very interesting. Something like an address becomes a passion, and you can. I wasn't aware that in the Middle East they had no addresses, for example. It's something I got to learn in the last few months. Or not that they don't have addresses, but they're just right. It's completely different from what we're used to. We live in our Europe or UK, and we're used to postcodes, and you're just facing different realities of emerging markets. It's just very, very interesting to learn, and but it's great to know that we have a solution and we are solving this problem for a lot of customers globally.
No, we all get used to our own ways of thinking, and we're so confident, right? So it's just, I totally understand what you're saying, and it's not that we're just ignorant about what's going on, but you just don't see it.
You just don't know,
right? You don't know, don't even think about some of those things, right? Because they're just so foreign to what you do and where you are in the world. But it's but I guess that's why this area is so exciting, right? Technology, and the world's getting smaller and smaller at such a fast pace that what you guys are doing is not only incredible, but definitely has a huge potential to changing the world, hopefully for the better.
Definitely. And I feel very lucky to have the opportunity to work for such a global company. Because if I hadn't, I wouldn't have known about addresses around the world, for example. It's one of the many things I wouldn't have learned. But yeah, it's a truly unique opportunity, and get to learn about different cultures and different markets and how everything changes across the world.
Dara, for you, and again, from like a different lens, what would be one of the biggest challenges that you're currently facing? If you go to bed at night, what's the one thing that you're like, oh, this is something that's coming and it's something that I need to fix or solve as a problem solver that you are?
Yeah, but one of the biggest challenges that we're working with our customers on is probably the disparity between e-commerce and retail and logistics. And we actually see a big separation there. I suppose the businesses that have been able to overcome that are the retailers or the e-commerce providers who have their own logistics arm, but they're sort of few and far between. And especially with COVID and with international travel, there's always going to be an element of the logistics arm where it has to be passed on to a third party, whether that's for international transport or for last mile delivery. So one thing that we've been working very hard on is sort of bridging that gap, and whether that's through relationships and partnerships or with solutions and technology that actually bridges that. So being able to understand and be able to capture point of delivery from the consumer, but have that transparently pass through to the logistics. And again, that can often pass through multiple different logistics or transport divisions before it actually gets back to the consumer. And how do we use technology to enable that? And sometimes that might involve being able to update or change that during the actual delivery process.
No, thank you very much. And yeah, it's a huge, fast growing area for sure. And it sounds like you guys are really tackling and taking these problems head on. And so, Kim, go ahead. Take us to the second part of this interview.
You're too kind, Enrique. Okay, so folks, look, again, the team from Oni Group are really multi-dimensional, very multifaceted, and looking to solve a whole host of problems and issues, not only in logistics, but I think logistics is really probably in the last year or two. But in your history of the company, how many years has the company been going, Dara?
It's been going since 15 years this year.
Okay. Yeah, sure. And I think my exposure, I think I met Herman Leong, one of the other directors of the business way back then. We'll talk about that in a minute. But look, I'm obsessed with the logistics because it is part of my life. My wife tells me I'm defined by logistics, so that's what it is. Talk to us about just one more snapshot about this issue of solving the last mile issue. Or problem. And Emanuela, you were talking before about how there are no addresses and what have you in the Middle East. I will have you know that many communities here do have street addresses. However, traditionally speaking, and the vast majority in the entire Middle East region, then there are not a lot of addresses, frankly. So hence, can we just drill down for the logistics freaks in the show out here listening a little bit more about this, what you can, and maybe not too much you can tell us, but tell us a little bit about the issues that you're trying to solve, and what are the ways you're going about trying to solve that last mile delivery issue. And then also, if you're doing anything for reverse logistics, which is a whole new show in itself, but maybe you can touch on that.
Yeah. Well, actually, funny you say that, because growing up in Ireland, we had the exact same issue, and they still have it in Ireland. When I write a letter to my family or send a parcel, it's their name and the road that they live on, and thankfully the local post person knows exactly where that person lives. But apart from that, there's very little information provided.
It's down past the pub on the corner, the third house past the pub.
Yeah. And God forbid two people have the same name on the same road. Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting where these like similar problems have a far reaching across different territories, and maybe it's something that Marty can talk to a bit deeper.
Yeah, Martin, just generically then about the technology, how the technology generally works to make sure this location system works.
Yeah, so I think if we break it down into different components, so a lot of times a logistics company will kind of think of, well, if I'm at A, how do I get to B in the fastest, most efficient route possible? The challenge that we look to solve, I think, and is a primary concern that a lot of companies kind of ignore is, well, what if A is actually wrong and B is actually wrong in the first place? And I mean, basically looking at location and addresses. That is that first component within that supply chain, that origin and that destination from a location standpoint that we look to solve. Is a really interesting story. So last year, when unfortunately the pandemic took hold, we were working with a very large logistics company, and they just said our business has exploded. And the word they used was every day is like Black Friday. And I said, look, if anything positive comes up, there's a positive. I said, out of interest, are you tracking, in terms of efficiencies of failed deliveries or futile charge, anything like that? And the answer was no. We're seeing things grow, and we're happy seeing that grow. We have nothing from that perspective. What it kind of pointed out to us, though, was there was a lack of depth from an analytics perspective of looking at all the different components and factors of that supply chain specifically, and looking at where some of those inefficiencies are actually occurring. And that's where we kind of targeted a lot of our approach. One was on fixing bad addresses, massively so. Another one was looking at, well, what are some of the challenges of being too transparent from a tracking perspective? I'll give you an example. If you have an Uber-like kind of tracking solution, visualizing exactly where that vehicle is, and it's food delivery, and it's very transparently saying that another order is being delivered before your order, what's the first thing you think of? You go, well, why is that order more important than mine? And what people do is inherently they will put a support ticket in. That was a problem that we never expected. And we just saw the data coming through of every single time we saw two or more orders, a customer would put a support ticket in. Why was mine not first? So we looked at solving that. So we reduced that transparency, but ensured that the data was just as real time. We also looked at accessibility. When you've got all these new customers last year that have traditionally relied on bricks and mortar to go and do their shopping and their groceries, etc., and suddenly they couldn't. A lot of these logistics companies couldn't actually cater for that customer. One was because of managing scale. They couldn't handle the capacity at the time. It was just unprecedented. And two, a lot of these customers were in areas that were actually out of delivery zones or somewhat seen as out of delivery zones. So we had to kind of rethink territories. We had to remap the way that they actually created milk runs for different customers. How suddenly, instead of John Smith doing 15 deliveries a day, that could be between 25 and 45, depending on the capacity required. So those are some of the problems that we just suddenly saw were now being a lot more evident, I think, that we had to solve. So we did that using data. So we started looking at, well, what data are they capturing? What data can we get from different APIs and services, like Google Maps platform, for example? What services from a cloud technology perspective could they potentially adopt that is very low cost, expedites their development, and lets them do something that they would normally hire 2 or 3 people for we kind of put those little pieces together, and we started to go, okay, there's a completely new way of solving these problems here. So yeah.
Really interesting, and I'm sure Enrique and I are going to want to come back and have another session with you folks in about 6 months.
I have like 2 pages of notes already. Yes, we'll definitely have to have a couple of follow-up sessions just to digest everything that you said there. And it's just fascinating. I'm just not a very technologically advanced person to start with, but thinking about every single thing that you mentioned, you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I never thought about that before, but yeah, sure, that's interesting.
Wow. Okay. So folks, I'm going to change the scene completely right now and flip the page. The technology is incredible. I think we're going to come back and talk more, especially our last mile in a few months' time, to see how that journey's going. But the way I first got exposed to Oni Group, probably about 15 years ago, was through one of the directors, Herman Leon, when the company got involved with a humanitarian organisation that I happen to have some engagement and involvement with, through a very dear friend of mine from as the head of partnerships for EMEA for Google, hence the dots being joined. And she introduced Oni Group to Oasis Africa, which is a fairly significant humanitarian organisation registered in Australia that supports mainly orphan kids in East Africa. You guys are responsible for the current existence of that organisation with your massive support and your very generous sponsorship and engagement with that organisation right throughout the last 10 to 15 years. Dara, maybe you can talk a little bit about the philosophy and the strategy inside the business and the culture inside your business that led that to happening.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the most compelling reasons for us to actually support Oasis Africa was the people who founded, obviously yourself and Lolita, Ross, and Karen. And when you actually see the passion that you bring to an organization like that, like it's a no-brainer to want to support it. And then fundamentally, what I suppose the vision of actually what you wanted to achieve with the charity was hugely compelling in regards to breaking the cycle. And I remember talking to Karen a number of years back, and we were sort of talking about, okay, what does the future look like? And one thing that she was very clear on was, okay, how do we actually break the cycle? So how do we get them through, how do we educate, and then how do we actually get them through and see those individuals go through not just primary, secondary.
Is anyone else?
Wi-Fi is striking again.
All right. Hey, we lasted a while, actually.
Oh, there you go. You're back.
Dara, so
you cut out for a second.
You cut out a little bit, so you'll have to take it again from what was the last thing that
you were talking about Karen, and then you're rolling on to the influence on the kids.
Okay, so like Karen's vision?
Yeah,
only about 10, 15 seconds ago.
Okay, cool. sorry about it. So yeah, one thing that Karen had a very clear vision on was in regards to breaking the cycle, but actually seeing kids progress from primary, secondary, and tertiary education into the workforce, which then obviously has knock-on effects both from the inspiration that they can bring back to their communities, that people can break out of the slums and the situations that they find themselves in, but then also how they actually feed back both financially back into the same community. So a very, very clear vision of actually what she wanted to achieve, and actually what Oasis Africa wants to achieve as a charity. So again, it's a very easy decision for us to want to support people who have a very clear vision, but also have the passion to see it through as well.
You've certainly made a huge impact. There's been over 8,000 kids educated and supported in their communities over the last 15 years or so. So I think the impact that you've made, that goes without saying at all. Now, Emanuela, just to you, throwing to you on this one. I mean, what sort of image do you, as the head of marketing, do you look to represent when you're speaking to the market through your various channels of marketing activity? What are the messages you're looking to deliver when people think of Oni Group? What do you want them to think of?
I guess we wanted to think that we are a company who constantly looks to innovate, look at new ways to help our customers, and looking to help customers across a variety of different industries. So from logistics to finance, and just trying to always learn about new trends. And I suppose one key thing is making the complex technology accessible to a variety of different industries and variety of different job functions. So not just developers or customer who are experts in technology, but marketing directors or senior decision makers that don't have technical backgrounds, like me, for example. I suppose one thing that we care about is we actually care about our customers. We care about listening of the problems, the business challenges they're facing, and find ways to work on the problems together. And of course, we also care a lot about giving back to society. So Oasis Africa, we've been trying to go and meet the students for a couple of years now, but unfortunately, pandemic has stopped us. And we support a variety of different charities as well. We have an initiative going on with Dementia Australia at the moment. We're supporting riders to do a cycle from Bondi to Berry in Australia. Did I pronounce it correctly, Dara? I'm not sure. Berry, Bondi to Berry. But yeah, so it's a variety of different things, and also we care about the team. We love our team, and we couldn't do what we do without every single one of the team, and we like to keep showing them that, and recognition. So yeah, I suppose employee recognition, and always looking out for new talents. Awesome. And enthusiastic people to join.
It sounds where I have a question for you, Emanuela. So where do I send my resume to again?
Well, that's a very, very good point that you're asking, because you should actually head to our careers page on our website. We have a lot of vacancies open at the moment, and we would be keen for
It sounds like a great company to work for, right? Caring, team-driven, innovative, trying to solve the problems of the world, accessible, and on top of that, they're trying to make a positive impact in the world. That sounds like a good culture you guys have.
That's an awesome segue, because I was just about to ask the question. I have a pet question as being a headhunter, as one of my day jobs, is what is, and I want to ask each of the three of you this, and I'm going to ask you, Enrique, as well, by the way, even though you're the anchor here, right? So it's 1 a.m. I'm allowed to ask what I want. So Martin, I'm going to start with you. If there's one thing that you are looking for somebody who you're looking to bring into the organization, into Oni Group, what would be the one determining X factor for you that's likely to tip them over into the yes versus the no column?
That is to quote all other Australians, a bloody good question. I would say someone that has the ability to literally think like an entrepreneur, but solve like an engineer. That's the number one thing that I look for. Someone wants to take a bit of a chance, but can think logically and programmatically about solving the problem. Yep. Nicely
answered. Dara, you've employed a lot of people. The company's grown leaps and bounds over the years. What would be the X factor for you? If you've got 4 or 5 people that are all pretty much round about the same capabilities, skills, what is going to be the X factor?
Yeah. I suppose the want to learn more, working and being aligned to a company like Google, innovation is like it's sort of bred into the DNA. So like what we do today would be very different to what we do next year and in 24 months time. So we don't necessarily, we look obviously for skill sets, but it's not a sort of deciding factor. It's that mentality of wanting to learn, wanting to solve problems. And I think back to Marty's point, like that engineering sort of mindset is a sort of key factor.
Well said. Thanks. Hey, Emanuela, I'm going to let you off the hook. You may or may not have hired a lot of people in your career to date. But the question to you is in the same genre is if you had 3 companies that you could join and you were looking and they all looked around about the same, what would be the determining factor of why you would join a particular company as a marketing specialist?
Why I would join a company as a marketing specialist?
Yeah, if there's 3 or 4 companies that look all pretty much the same, what would be the determining factor that would encourage you to join?
I suppose you can sum it up with the word care. So caring about employees and caring about ways to always go for the better, to find a better solution. I suppose I would look at. I would look at that, I suppose.
Okay.
And like, you didn't ask me that, but actually, like, an interesting question. You said you left me off the hook, but if someone were to apply for a marketing job, for example, or if I were to recruit anyone, care would be the most important attribute I would look for. So caring about your work, taking pride in your work, and always making an extra effort to come up with new ways to do things, improve processes. I think that's a really important one.
Well, Enrique, it is your show, but give us your answer as well. What would be the one? What's the X factor?
They basically summarize some of the things that I think are important, not only to be considered for a position at Vector, but also for them to be successful as professionals and entrepreneurs. But I think just being curious, and I think Dara mentioned it, like just people that are not afraid of making mistakes. I feel like a lot of people out there are just always trying to play it safely or just doing things for the sake of doing things as opposed to thinking, wait, why am I doing this? And then doing them. So I think just curiosity, integrity, and the rest of the things that they mentioned is what I'd look for.
Mate,
Awesome.
You should apply for a job. We'd hire you. That's a great answer.
I will send my resume to Emanuela.
When I joined the marketing team, very interesting.
No, don't do it.
No, it's been a great conversation with you, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time. And I know that it's been hard to coordinate given all our different time zones, but this has been fun and rewarding, and I appreciate you guys joining us for this conversation. I'm sure that we'll have to have like at least a couple of follow-up interviews down the road. Kim, thank you for joining us as well. What would you didn't answer your own question. What would you look for if you're hiring candidates?
Well, I'm in the envious position of looking at resumes all day, every day, all over the world, 3 or 14 offices. So it's more about the lens for me, and the focus is what is our clients looking for. I suppose if I skew that around a little bit, when we're looking to match talent with talent acquisition, if you like, with clients looking to bring in specialist talent, what I can say is that an overwhelming, incredible amount of clients are now looking at soft skills and the sorts of entrepreneurialism and the sorts of things that Dara and Martin and Emanuela are actually talking about. And there is people can think on their feet, not afraid to make decisions. Yeah, look, they may have the MBA, they may have a degree in engineering, they may have done 15 years and this and that. But if you're talking e-commerce, you're talking dealing with data, you're talking dealing with technology, people have got to be wide open minds. And this is where, of course, younger generations are coming through with great expectations of companies, of opportunity, of exposure, of information flow. So for me, it's all about making sure we encourage people to think openly and laterally and not to be linear about the way they present themselves to clients. And we encourage clients to look past the obvious and look to people who can actually think through things, solve problems, and learn and be agile.
Thank you so much. And once again, thank you, everyone. It's been a real pleasure. This has been Supply Chain Now with a really interesting conversation with Oni Group. And to close the show, if there's any kind of call to action that you guys would like to share with our audience and people listening to us, like one thing that you would actually ask from our audience going forward, what would that be? Dara, Emanuela, and Martin, and one call to action for our listeners as we say goodbye to this very interesting interview.
One is, I suppose, understand what data you have and what data you can collect, and see how you can actually use it to improve your business.
Excellent.
From my end, I just want you to throw a problem at me and tell me it's impossible.
Send
I
Martin
love
a
it when
problem.
that happens.
Nice.
That's the best thing. Challenge. I love a good challenge. Yeah.
And I'll say, go on our website, onigroupglobal.com, follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, keep up to date with events, and try and learn as much as you can. Hope to, for listeners to learn from us, and then us learning from you guys as well.
Thank you so
knowledge.
much. And that was, I know, I actually, my next bullet point was actually telling you where people could get in touch with you, but you're a true marketeer and you had to get that before we closed anything.
Sorry, cannot help myself.
No, that's great. So with, you already mentioned the website a couple of times, but if people that are listening want to contact you guys, is the website the best place, or is there anywhere else that they can go out and find more information about Oni Group or you as individuals?
You can find it all on the website, onigroupglobal.com, the contact page. You can then follow us on Instagram or LinkedIn or Facebook. You can message us on any of these channels and we'll make sure we'll get back to you.
Perfect. Go ahead, Kim. You can close this episode for us.
Well, one little plug. Before I came on about an hour ago, I noticed on LinkedIn you've got a fantastic event, which I've just signed up for.
I've noticed.
Emanuela, you missed that. Tell us about the event.
Oh, okay. So this is going to be different from logistics. So we are going to look at teaching you how to manage all the Google services that you're using. From if you're a marketer, you'll be using ads or analytics. If you work in location, you'll use Google platform or maps, and we'll show you how to identify any of these unmanaged services and sort of securely locking them and finding ways to work with teams, especially with the increase of working from home. So how to work together safely. And I don't know if Marty, you want to add something, because this is Martin's event.
I think, look, it's solving shadow IT basically within the Google Cloud ecosystem, and security vulnerabilities that come from the most easy to use self-service technology in the world. Great for innovation, not so great for security, but we're going to show you how to fix it.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, thank you once again, Kim. It was a pleasure. This was the first time together, hopefully the first of many more to come. Thank you so much to Dara, Emanuela, and Martin. It was a pleasure. And thank you once again for joining us at Supply Chain Now.
Thanks for being a part of our Supply Chain Now community. Check out all of our programming at supplychainnow.com and make sure you subscribe to Supply Chain Now anywhere you listen to podcasts. And follow us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. See you next time on Supply Chain Now.